Hi, everybody, and good afternoon. My name is Marcela Černochová, and I am the Managing Director of the British Chamber of Commerce. I hope you are all safe and you do enjoy this beautiful sunny weather, though it might be a bit more complicated with some of the restrictions. And I really hope that you are managing successfully this challenging situation. We at the British Chamber of Commerce been rather busy to prepare for you a good selection of online workshops, which we believe will help you to cope with these difficult days. There are many challenges for all of us: how to cope with being locked down, how to deal with the lack of social contact, how to stay positive, or maybe the question is rather, do I have to stay always positive, or am I strange and total loser if I feel sometimes a bit down? And there are many other questions, thoughts and feelings. And in fact, one of the challenges is about how to deal with the situation and not getting mad with yourself or maybe with your beloved ones. And this is why we ask Ženatý, very experienced psychologist. And I must say, I'm really happy that he agreed to hold this webinar.
My pleasure.
He has a strong psychological background and 13 years of experience with individual and team coaching. And as far as I can say from what I have seen and heard, he is a great speaker and very enthusiastic trainer. And I must say that the COVID-19 brought many terrible things. But there is a number of positive elements as well. And then, for example, I must say that one of them is that I finally have the chance to meet Honza Ženatý, though at this moment only virtually, because I have heard so many great stories from people who met him in person or joined his speeches and training. So I really believe that there is a lot to share and a lot to learn for us. Maybe just a technical note, for questions, please use the chat box, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. So you can give the questions as they come to your mind, and Honza will decide how to answer, whether leave it till the end or will answer immediately. So now, Honza, welcome. Many thanks, and
thank you very much.
Over to you.
Thank you very much for your intro. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jan, or Honza, and as Marcela said, I'm a psychologist. And I would love to share some ideas and thoughts with you today about how not to get mad in those maybe demanding times. I will talk about mindset, about optimism and pessimism, which is kind of baseline setting of your mind, and can help a bit to cope with the pressure we can feel. Then I would like to tell you something about worries as a very specific mind phenomenon, about negative thoughts and how to work with those. And for the last part of my presentation, I've prepared some hints and tips from the field of mindfulness, which is, from my experience, very powerful strategy which can help you and enhance your emotional resilience. So those are the topics I would like to cover in my speech. And as Marcela said, I'll be happy for your questions. So please do not hesitate and use the chat, and you can ask anything you want. Maybe I will have the answer. I have some slides for you, so I'll be switching between the camera and my screen to show you some of the slides to provide you with kind of the framework of today's webinar. And it is okay for me to share those slides, so if you're interested, I'll be happy to give those to you. Before I will start to talk about the topics I promised to you, I would like to mention that I'm part of a voluntary initiative which is called Dělám, co můžu, and it is a group of psychologists who decided to offer free help in those times to people in need. So please, in case you find yourself or you will see somebody in your family or around you that suffers with some stress syndrome or stronger psychological problems, you can visit web page dělamcomůžu.cz, which is available in English as well. And you can contact one of the 233 experts who will be happy to arrange a Skype call or just a usual phone call with you and provide you with some discussion or maybe therapy if needed. Those people, those 233 experts are available in English, and we can offer more of the languages. I'm sure we have somebody who is able to speak Finnish, so if you need to, there's a great range of languages. And we have also kind of hotline, psychotherapy hotline. So if you visit the web page, you can see not only the list of the specialists who offer support, but also the phone number for the psychotherapy hotline, and use it if you need to, or if you know about somebody who need it. So you are welcome. You are welcome to use this feature. So first of all, or first idea I would like to share with you is that our basic emotion mindset really matters. Basically, we talk about people who are rather optimistic or pessimistic. We believed for long years that this kind of nature is innate. So you are born with some dispositions to be rather pessimistic or depressive, or on the other hand, to be more optimistic. But the current research shows that there is a still great part of strategies you can learn and utilize to switch between those mindsets. Basically, we are aiming the optimistic mindset, because we believe that optimism is not only more pleasant than pessimism, but also we know that optimistic people are more emotionally resilient. They are more able to cope with demanding situations. And what can be interesting and maybe important in those days is that optimistic people have stronger immunity. So by working with your mindset, you can support your immunity, your physiology, and be more resilient towards not only the psychological problems, but also the physiological ones as well. One of the most interesting study which has been done about the optimism is done by Professor Martin Seligman, which is American psychologist, and he wrote a book which is called Learned Optimism. In his point of view, optimism and pessimism as well is kind of habit. We are used to see the world some way. Basically, optimism and pessimism works as kind of cognitive bias, kind of cognitive filter. Our cognitive capacity is pretty much limited. We are not able to perceive everything around us. And this kind of filter, this kind of bias, filters the information which we are going to perceive and which we are going to ignore. And there are very interesting studies about how to work with those filters and how to work with those biases. One of them, you have the citation of the study from 2011 by Halian and Rassio, which they tried it to measure the impact of the cognitive bias modification exercises to people who suffer with anxiety and depression. And they proved that even the people with some psychopathological problems can really help themselves with very simple exercises. So the basic idea is that if you are rather optimistic, you prefer the positive information. And if I provide you with some list of information, you will rather focus those which makes you happy and ignore those which would do the opposite. And this kind of filter, this kind of bias can be trained or shaped. So basically we can say is what do you focus on is what you get. If you start to read newspapers and you read the headlines of the catastrophic information all around you, you may start to perceive the world as very, very terrible place. On the other hand, if you choose the information you would like to consume and focus on some good news. So for example, current situation with the virus is really beneficial for the nature. I saw many photos of differences in air pollution, not only in China, but also in the rest of the world. So there are some positive sides of the current situation. And what do you focus on is what you get, at least emotionally. There are several exercises you can adapt to work with your mind. What we do in psychiatry with depressive patients for many years is a very simple exercise. Just ask them each night, just before they go sleep, to take pen and paper and write down 3 things which happened today to them and are positive. So what you are grateful for, let's say. This very simple exercise helps you to build a habit to focus on positive experience each evening. And there are some studies which says that within 3 weeks of this kind of practice, your overall level of emotion and satisfaction will switch into the positive side. So it really works for the depressive patients as well. You don't have to use this kind of diary. Today, the technology is awesome, and you can download the smartphone app, which will help you to work with your cognitive bias. I'm a huge Apple fan, so I use iPhone, and I use Mood Mint app, which is actually just for Apple. So if you are Android, you should search your app store to try to find some different application. So please use the keyword cognitive bias modification, or CBM. That's the keyword for those frameworks. Mood Mint is one of them. It's a very simple application which you can download on your phone, and it provides you with some routines, with some exercises you can start to do on a daily basis. The most basic exercise which Mood Mint offers to you is exercise with photographies. You open up the app and you will see 4 different photographies where 3 of them are negative. And your task is very simple. As fast as you are able, pick up the positive one and click on it. It will measure your time and count your score, so there is kind of gamification process. But what's rather important is that this kind of practice helps to reshape your brain to focus on positive information. So when you start to use this and build it as a routine to your everyday life, you will find out that after several days, you've learned to focus on positive things. So as Marcel mentioned, very beautiful weather right now. You can look out of the window and enjoy yourself just from seeing the trees and the green grass. So movement is one of the ways how you can help with your mindset or cognitive bias. There is a joke about optimism, and I really like it, so I would like to share it with you. There is a little boy which is about 4 years old, and he's very, very happy kid and very positive, very optimistic. And his father thinks about him and thinks about he may be too optimistic or maybe too almost naive. And he thinks about he would like to give him some kind of corrective experience to be more realistic, let's say. And because it is just before Christmas, he decides to give him the experience of not really nice Christmas. So he decides not to buy gifts to him. He only arranged the tree in the living room, and instead of Christmas, he brings the horse shit, excuse my language, the horse shit he found on the street and puts it on the floor under the tree. And he's kind of expecting what the boy will do. So the evening comes and the boy is looking forward to see the tree and see all the presents. And when the doors opens and he enters the room, the living room, he sees the tree and he sees the horse shit on the floor. It takes him a second or two, and then he turns around to his dad and says, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, there must be a pony somewhere." I really like this joke because it demonstrates how optimism works. It gives you kind of faith or kind of light on the end of the tunnel. And what is important here is that if you really believe that there is a pony somewhere, you will keep up looking for him. And when you are looking for a pony, you will eventually find one. So my first recommendation for me is never stop looking for a pony, and do your best to trying to find it. You can help yourself with the cognitive bias modification application or movement or similar one. So that's my first recommendation to build up your emotional resilience. There is another important issue which I would like to mention, which is related with something we call self-fulfilling prophecy. So let me share my screen again. The self-fulfilling prophecy is a phenomenon which is described from 90s by a psychologist whose name is Robert Rosenthal, and you can find it under the name Pygmalion effect as well. And the self-fulfilling prophecy is the effect which says that if you really believe that something is going to happen or will happen, it is then more likely that it will really happen. So I don't know if you like horoscope, but I'm not kind of regular reader of horoscopes, but I found a horoscope for myself for today. Actually, I'm Aquarius, so I looked for Aquarius horoscope, and I found this one on horoscope.com for today, that it is possible that I'll receive some rather distressing news today. And if you really believe in horoscope and you receive this kind of prophecy, your brain will start to expect some distressing news. So it already triggers some kind of stress reaction. We are more alerted, or we are more ready for some kind of tragedy or bad news. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that under this curse, let's say, when we hear some information from our beloved ones or from TV, we tend to frame those information as negative because we believe that this really works. So this is the example from the horoscope, but it's not only the horoscope which can affect you. This is some newspaper headline I found on the internet. So those living in polluted cities are more at risk from COVID-19, blah, 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 blah. So if you are from Prague, or if you live here, it may start to create some negative scenario in your head and create some stressful thoughts, and not only thoughts, the self-fulfilling prophecy as well. So we need to be careful about what we put into our mind, because first of all, it affects how we feel in the moment. If you are afraid of flying and you are on the airport, you already start to have the stress reaction. Nothing happens in the moment. You are just somewhere sitting, drinking a coffee, but you are visualizing yourself in the plane, and you are thinking about the potential catastrophes you can experience. And what is a bit ironic is that in the moment, while you are on the airport, you are completely safe. But you already suffer with this kind of stress reaction because of your imagination. So that's the first issue with negative thoughts. The second issue is that, as we know from Robert Rosenthal's study, in case it is related with your condition, with your performance, and you really believe that something will be good or bad, you then go for it. So it affects, you are more likely to succeed or fail just based on your belief. So beware of thoughts, beware of the content of your mind, and choose what you let inside of your brain, and what kind of thoughts would you like to focus on. Related with negative thoughts, there is another very interesting experiment from my point of view. There is a Daniel Wegner's studies and experiments about negative or unwanted thoughts, and he created such a weird experiment arrangement, but it's still pretty interesting, so I would like to share with you. He asked about 20 people to sit around the table. He gave each of them a small bell and put it on the table, and asked those participants of the experiment that they will have to sit like that for about 20 minutes. And their only task for those 20 minutes is not to think about white bear. It's a bit ridiculous, but that's what he asked them to do. And it has one condition. So if you fail, even though you are not allowed to think about white bear, if you fail and you let the white bear inside of your mind, you need to ring your bell. So if you have 15 or 20 people in the room who are trying not to focus on white bear, two things happen. The first one is each individual in the room tries the best to suppress or avoid thoughts about white bear. And ironically, the more you try to suppress this thought, the more it occurs in your head. So this theory or this phenomenon is called ironic process. The more you try to suppress some thoughts, the thoughts will occur. The second effect is with the little bell and ringing the bell, because when you fail, or from the other perspective, when you know that ringing the bell is the information that your colleagues in the room failed in the attempt not to think about white bear, and you hear the ringing of the bell, you immediately start to think about the white bear as well, because you know it's the sign of thinking of the white bear. So it's for me, it's very nice and very, very funny and interesting experiment, which says we can't control or avoid some thoughts. We can't ask our mind not to focus on something. it's very similar to, sometimes we say sentences like that to our kids. Do not fall from the tree. Not a good recommendation from my point of view, because when you ask somebody not to fall from the tree while they are climbing on some, you will find out that you just increase the probability and the kid is more likely to fall down, because you've just put the idea of falling out from the tree to the mind of the kid. So what to do, how to work with our mind in case we don't want to think about white bear? Well, one of the easiest strategies is try to refocus your mind. So try to think about something different. Let's say green rabbit. If you are able to really focus green rabbit for 20 minutes, you will succeed in this type of experiment. So my second takeaway for you today is, do not try to suppress your negative thoughts. It doesn't work. It is not effective. And ironically, you will make it worse. What you can do if you find yourself thinking about some negative scenarios, worrying yourself, you can consciously refocus your attention on something which is rather positive or maybe neutral. I agree with what Marcela said in the beginning, or the question she asked. There is no need to be 100% time happy and laughing, but I believe that it's worth to try to avoid the negative feelings. So refocusing our attention, trying to focus on something which is, let's say, neutral or more positive, is my second recommendation. I will pause my presentation for a moment and check whether we have already some questions for you, from you. No, not yet. So again, if there is anything what comes to your mind, feel free to ask directly. I am going to show you another experiment or research which I find interesting. And this one is from 2010. And it was published in the Science magazine, so pretty much famous scientific magazine. And it's a research done by McHugh Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert. To me, it was for the first time when I read this research, it was a bit counterintuitive, but it makes sense in the end of the day. What's this experiment about? They were trying to measure how much time we think about something different or about something else that we are actually doing or we are actually in the moment. The human mind compared to animal mind is specific that we have the ability to recall some memories and focus on those memories, or we can create some potential scenarios of the future. So daydreaming, actually. What is interesting on this study is that the authors were able, via collecting data from the smartphone application from the volunteers, they were able to find out that people in this experiment spent almost half of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they were doing. So their mind was kind of wandering or traveling around. And what is the counterintuitive part for me is that when your mind is wandering, it typically makes people unhappy. Why? Well, if you just leave your mind and let it wander around, it will probably start to create some thoughts or some scenarios or expectations which are fulfilled with emotion. because the emotion is kind of the key component of our mind, and all the memories we have are sorted with some emotional marks or labels, and all the potential scenarios we are about to create are also labeled with those emotional meaning. And statistically, there are 7 basic emotions we have, and only one of them is 100% pleasant feeling. It is joy or happiness. We have surprise, which is kind of neutral emotion, so we can't really say whether surprise is a priori good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. And we have 5 emotions which are not pleasant to us. It is sadness, fear, disgust, contempt, and anger. And just statistically, if you just let your mind wander around, you are more likely to recall some memory or to create some scenario which is rather negative than positive. So I love this picture as an illustration of what we are talking about. Animals are very much here and now, so they are somehow anchored to their senses and to the current situation they are just living. Human brain is wandering, and it spends its attention on things which are not happening, and they may be pretty stressful. We can't really manage or work with the meaning of negative scenarios. What we can do is to manage the wandering. We can work with our mind, not to really let it create those ideas, but try to be more like the animal and be more present in our focus. And basically, that's what the mindfulness practice is about. So one of the greatest strategies, and I really can recommend mindfulness not only as a psychologist, but also as a person who is practicing those exercises on everyday basis. Mindfulness is set of techniques or kind of attitude to meditation and working with our focus, our mind. One of the greatest ambassadors of mindfulness is Jon Kabat-Zinn. That's it is a medicine doctor who spent some time in Buddhist temple and went into the Buddhist practice and meditation practice, and he founded the clinic in US where he started to deliver something which is called MBSR, which is the shortcut for mindfulness-based stress reduction. He works with patients who suffer with pain or with acute stress syndromes like PTSD. And he created 8 weeks course or training for those people. And he's able to deliver amazing results with them. And it is all just based on mindfulness. I would like to recommend you a book from Jon, bit ironic title, Full Catastrophe Living, but it is a very good guide to mindfulness exercises and this kind of practice. So if you are interested, please try Jon. He's one of the best in this area. The basic idea behind mindfulness is to be here and now. So try not to let your mind wander, let your mind to travel around, but to focus on what is present. A lot of stress reaction comes from what if scenario. So I'm thinking about what if something is going to happen to me, to my family, to my clients, to my business. And all of those are some potential negative scenarios which may occur in the future, but they are not here and now. And that's why here and now is a very good place to charge your emotional batteries and have a rest and relax a bit. There are some, let's say, structured exercises you can practice to be more mindful. But on the end of the day, any activity you do and which focuses here and now is partially mindfulness exercise. So if you have a cup of coffee, try, let's say, once per day, not just drink it, but try to really enjoy it. Try to slow down and try to close your eyes and smell the coffee before you taste it. Try to really slow down and enjoy the taste of the coffee and be just with the coffee for the moment. You will find that it is like a magic. If you spend just 2 minutes with your coffee, with your food, with anything which is senses related, you will find it very, very, very deliberating and helping with the feelings and current emotional state. So paying attention on what I feel, what I see, what I hear right now is a step towards the mindfulness. There are more, let's say, meditative practices of mindfulness. So again, I do recommend Jon Kabat-Zinn. He has several videos on YouTube. So if you Google his name or go directly to YouTube and try to find Jon Kabat-Zinn, you'll find out that he has several recordings on YouTube with sort of guided meditations. Very, very interesting and very pleasant exercises which can last from 3 minutes to 45 minutes. So if you are really, you can go for 45 minutes meditation, or you can take just the very quick one. And there are several of types of those meditations. Majority of them are focusing our breathing. So several breathing exercises, which is not only about focusing the breath, but about slowing it down and play with the depth of the breathing. One of my favorites is body scan. Body scan is a meditation or kind of visualization when you lie down or sit down and close your eyes, and you have a little walk around your body and you try to focus different muscle groups on your body, and you check whether there is some muscle tension in your body and you try to release it. When we are stressed or deeply emotional, our body starts to create tension and the muscles are locking. So this kind of activity, when typically you start with your head and you focus on your forehead, on your eyes, on the mouth, on your cheeks, and you try to, with exhale, you try to release the tension from the muscles. And if you spend 3 to 5 minutes on this body scan and you focus different parts of the body and release the tension from the muscles, it really helps with calming down the emotions. So another nice and effective technique on how to fight the acute stress reaction. Actually, this kind of activity with the muscles or body scan is something which is being used for psychiatric patients as well. There is a interesting, a bit weird, but still very effective technique which is called Jacobsen progressive relaxation, and it works with the muscle tension as well, but in a different way. In a Jacobsen, first what you need to do is to completely lock, intense the muscles and then release it. It's very interesting to feel or see the difference between just trying to release, or first lock the muscle and then release it. It's for a lot of people easier. It's a bit weird or ridiculous you do this exercise on public, because of course you need to move a bit. So if I show you just with my face how Jacobsen looks like, the first phase is to completely load the muscles and then release it. So it looks like that. And you can imagine that when you are surrounded by people and they don't know what you are doing, it may be perceived as a bit weird. But if you are alone, please give it a try. It's a very interesting activity. You can find out that a lot of mindfulness exercises are somehow focused on our body, from two good reasons. The first reason is our body is always here and now. Our body doesn't have the ability to travel around like our mind. The second reason is that stress generally and all the emotional reactions are in fact rather physiological reactions than psychological ones. So it is related with the hormones, it is related with some physiological changes in your body. And if you work with your body in those mindfulness exercises like breathing exercise, body scan, or the progressive relaxation I just demonstrated, it helps to, let's say, digest the emotional or stress reaction and refocus or retune to different feeling and different condition, let's say. By the way, what's really interesting from my point of view on stress reaction is that stress reaction is not necessarily or negative for us. We are talking about two types of the stress. One is called eustress, the second one is called distress. Distress is the negative one. Distress is the one which is poisoning us. The eustress, on the other hand, is I can't say really positive, but it is not harmful to us. And the difference between what is eustress and what is distress is quite subjective. We can't say in advance whether some kind of experience or some kind of activity will be creating rather this kind of positive or negative stress. It depends on individuals, even though the very same activity can have different meaning to people. I'm a huge fan of martial arts. I train martial arts and I love to spar with my sparring partners. My wife can't see it, so she just pretty stressed when she sees or experiences this activity. So it has very different meaning for us. One of the basic differences between eustress and distress is our subjective belief, what meaning the situation or activity has. If you believe that the situation is not a real threat, and if you believe that you can manage and you can control the output of the situation, you typically perceive eustress. If you are subjectively, if you feel helpless or powerless, you will perceive the distress, the destructive one. So let's say with the current situation, if you are religious and you pray in the evening, in your perception, in your subjective reality, this is kind of action, how to protect yourself, how to protect your family. So it will transform portion of this distress into the not so harmful eustress. If you are not religious, prayer will probably not help you, but still you can try to think and focus on what you can control, what you can affect in the current situation. There are typically three areas or zones of our influence. The first zone is the zone of control. So what can I directly control with my actions, with my thoughts, with my emotions? I can decide on my hygiene rules. I can wash my hands regularly. I can focus on positive news. I can stay in the social contact with my beloved ones, even though in the virtual environment. So focus on what I can control helps to reduce the negative effects of the stress and recreates the distress into eustress. Then there is a second zone, which is not under my direct influence, but still I can affect somehow, typically relationships. I can't decide for my wife to do something, but I can talk to her, I can share my thoughts, maybe recommendations, but maybe tricky. And I can just affect her, not control, I can't, but affect her. Then there is a third area, typically the weather, something I can't affect directly with my actions. The zone of what I can't control. And if you spend your energy thinking about what you can't control, it will be pretty demanding and exhausting to your mind. So it is like the white bear. If you find yourself thinking about things you can't control, try to consciously refocus into something you can at least affect, not maybe control, but at least you have some level of influence on it. So what can I do is the question we need to ask ourselves in times like that. So those are my basic thoughts and recommendations. The first one was about you can build up your optimistic mind. You can create a habit to perceive world as a good place, which is good for you. It is not only pleasant, but it really supports qualities like our immunity. The second recommendation says, beware of your mind wandering. If you let your mind just travel around, you're probably about to find some negative scenario. And if you have one, you can't really ask yourself not to think about it. What you need to do is to refocus consciously and choose what we are about to focus on. And the third general recommendation says, focus here and now. Work with your body, work with your sense. Listen to the music, smell some nice flowers, have a coffee and enjoy it with your full attention. You can use John Kabat-Zinn's guided meditations as an inspiration and visit his YouTube channel or maybe go through the book. I just recommend you The Full Catastrophe Living. And the fourth recommendation from my point of view is try to focus on what you can control or at least affect. Try to avoid thoughts about what is completely out of your influence. I have a question here. So where is the border when feeling sad and down is still okay, and when it's better to look for a professional help? I would say that feeling down or sad, or allowing yourself to feeling down and sad, is very healthy. We know that, for example, if you are crying, it helps the body to cope with the situation, and you will be quicker or more quickly happy again. So please do not try to suppress the negative emotions. It doesn't make sense. It is quite typical that emotion or mood lasts for hours, maybe days. If you find yourself in 2 weeks of desperate or sadness, it starts to be the chronic state. And then I recommend to really think about using dělám, co můžu, as I mentioned in the very beginning, or some professional. It's not a shame. It's not a shame. I believe that some kind of consultation is very useful for everybody, for each of us. I have my own consultations, not only in supervision, but also about my personal life as well, even though I perceive myself as a professional in this field. So I would say that time duration is one of the keys which will help you to think about whether you want to try or not. There are typically, when we are trying to assess somebody's mental health, we are asking questions on sleep. How do you sleep? Do you have troubles to fall asleep or to wake up in the morning? That's the first thing we are trying to check. The second one is eating habits, or how much you are hungry, whether you have some troubles eating or digesting food. And the third one is the sexual life, whether you enjoy yourself with your precious one, or there are some problems. In case you find out that one of those three areas somehow doesn't work, it may be another clue towards thinking about having some consultation. What was my biggest challenge during this time for you professionally, but also personally? Well, thank you for this question. Actually, I have to say that as a member of Yantamuu, I offer free consultations with for individuals, and I have to say, and it is not only my feeling, I have statistics which supports it. There is a great increase of domestic violence in those days. It makes sense because there is a cabin fever effect. People are isolated at home just together with the families. And the sad statistic says that even in normal times, the most dangerous place on this planet is the kitchen. There is a highest probability to be attacked in your kitchen. And unfortunately, the kitchen is full of potential weapons. So it's not the best or the safest place where to have the argument. I had about 3 or 4 of the consultations about not only verbal aggression, but really the physical aggression, almost torturing. I had the very difficult conversation with young mother who lives with the partner who beats the 4-year-old daughter. So those situations are really demanding, also personally, not only professionally. So that's what comes to my mind when I read this question as kind of association or thought. We are cooperating heavily with police and advocates, so we are trying to do our best to help those people, but it's just sad. It's happening. So in case you have any more questions, we still have a couple of minutes. Oh, I can see some in this Q&A window. So does self-fulfilling prophecies work the same way for both the positive and the negative outcomes? Yes, they do. They do. Actually, there is a famous Czech movie, Jáchyme, hoď ho do stroje. If you saw it, it's about a guy who has a very sophisticated horoscope with those prophecies for each day. And every morning he checks whether today is a good day or bad day. And it's a nice simulation of that positive self-fulfilling prophecy works as well. I can't really promise you that if you try to, let's say, imagine that you won the lottery, it will increase your chances. But if you are, let's say, in the middle of some sport performance or art performance, you're playing the piano, and you have you are kind of somehow primed towards that it will be the piece of art, or it will be outstanding performance. You are much more likely to deliver great results. So yes, it works on the positive way as well as negative. Do you teach classes in English? I studied psychology years ago, and your talk brought me back to my years at university. I love these topics and would love to take a class. Yeah, sure. I would like to share my email address with all of you. So in case you have any, let's say, individual questions or anything you would like to consult or discuss with me, I am completely open towards it and happy to stay in touch. Another question, stop mind wandering is an enormous task for me. Yes, I can agree. Mindfulness is okay, but not enough. Any other tips? Wow. I have to say that for me, I need to get completely physically tired. So physical exercise, sweating, heavy breathing, those are strategies which really work for me. It's the part of my martial arts practice which really feeds me personally, that I can get completely tired, and it just has the calming effect for me, and my mind completely stops to wander. I wouldn't say that mind wandering, as we mentioned with the study or research, creates the platform for some negative thoughts to occur, but not necessarily do it. So if you have daydreams about positive topics, it will have completely opposite effect. So I don't want to say try to stop mind wandering completely. Maybe be more conscious about it. You can train contact with yourself when you, let's say, 2 or 3 times per day, just make a note on what you are thinking about right now. It helps to create better contact or better conscious control about what we are thinking about. So those are my associations or experiences. Maybe another one, as we discussed with Marcella before the rest of you joined, we both love animals. I have a dog, and I have to say that being in the presence of a dog or an animal really helps you to pay attention to what's going on right now, instead of having those scenarios in your head. Any other question? Okay, it seems that's it.
Okay, Honza, I think we are just getting till the end of our time.
Yes, the time is running.
So thank you so much for the great talk.
Thank you.
I think it was really inspiring and many food for our minds and brains to digest. So once again, many thanks, and maybe before we will close the session, I'd like to invite our participants and maybe even yourself for some upcoming events, which basically you can all see them at our webpage. But just maybe to tease you a bit for the next week, we plan three events. All of them are actually on 23rd April. There is one webinar about key elements of the change management. Then there is one about crisis leadership, which is very intensive and small group workshop, series of 4 sessions for 4 or 5 people, and we have last place available. And then we have a business and lifestyle event, which is about suiting is my signature look. And that's about dressing code, tips and rules how to dress. Also in quite unusual situations, for example, when you are doing video conference or doing Zooming. So that's done with Pietro Filippi. I think many useful stuff for us. And just to tease you even more, we are now at the chamber busy with preparing 2 more fun events, which will be a live cooking show with Philip Seiler and also blind wine tasting online. So I think that should help you to stop your mind wandering and maybe focus on the very positive things. So Honza, once again, thank you so much. It was
thank you for having me. And Marcelo, may I ask you to share my email address with the participants of today's webinar, as I promised to stay in touch.
We will do that, and hopefully, if nothing will go wrong, we will also put on our webpage
Sure.
recording of this whole session. So, thank you all. As we say nowadays, keep safe and try to enjoy the beautiful life. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.